So why should you care? That's the key question here as we get into it. And here's a couple of quotes. There was a gentleman by the name of Dale Carnegie, right? How to Win Friends and Influence People. He wrote the Nice Guy Bible, in my opinion, okay? 1937 is when he wrote it, and what he said was dealing with people is the biggest problem you're going to face in business. Well, 75 years later, if you poll corporate executives and certainly HR talent organizations, they say the same thing. And just as one quote I found just recently on an outsource executive, the biggest challenge corporations have today is getting people to play together in the sandbox. There's no shortage of bright people. There's no shortage of talent. In fact, there's more talent than there was 75 years ago because we now have a global resource of talent. The problem is getting them to work together to optimize. So the real question is, how do you get all of these people to work together? And you need a unifying thread, and it's a thread built on interpersonal relations. And you're going to leverage that thread and leverage those interpersonal relations, not just to create any old culture, but to create a culture that accelerates productivity, is a motivational culture. That's what the sandbox begs for. So, quick definition. But the definition, when it comes to the organizational world, is it's somebody who walks in and inherently believes in the goodness of others and assumes that others want to succeed. So the going-in assumption is one that these people are here to learn and succeed and do well and be competitive. I assume that going in. That's my mindset going in. And therefore, I'm going to treat them all with dignity and respect and positive encouragement all the time. And I'm doing that not just because it's the ethical thing to do, but because I actually believe that that treatment will result in better outcomes. And I want to win. I want to make more money, and we all want to make more money. But I sincerely believe that that's what does it. And to be able to carry that through on a consistent basis, a nice person has developed an incredible ability to have perspective, broad vision and perspective, a sense of balance, and listen to that word balance and remember that word, and a tremendous amount of self-discipline and self-control. Not perfect, not sainthood, not perfection, not robotic, but a tremendous amount of attentiveness to mastering one's own ego versus humility, and mastering one's own emotions, emotion versus self-control. And those are the key definitions. And what we got to do is we got to bust the myth a little bit. It's so strongly entrenched in our society, in our mindset. It's a nice guy is not someone who can't lead, can't make tough decisions, doesn't get good results, doesn't want to win. That's the myth we have to bust. And to do that, we have to push ourselves from doubt to conviction, because what happens is it's really easy to believe it for a while and do it for a while, and then guess what? It's the end of the quarter, the end of the year, and I'm behind budget. Or there's a project due and we're behind our deadline. Or there's somebody barking at me from a top and from above, and that's going to make me translate that. That's when it gets really tough. The only way to get through that is to go from doubt to this full sense of confidence. Who started it all, this whole doubt part? Leo DeRocher, right? How many people knew that? He actually did say it. He actually didn't say it. He actually was misquoted by Red Barber in the newspaper in 1947, but he didn't care because he was a nasty bastard. And he was also a self-promoter. And so he took it and he wrote the book about how you kind of got to be nasty to win, but he didn't create it, he didn't invent it. It's been around forever. It's been around from the battlefield, right? Where there's no Hall of Fame for nice guy, generals. I was so nice, we won the war. It doesn't exist, right? To the ball field, right? I mean, we absolutely celebrate and praise winners, and we love the fact that they won the nasty guy way. We accept that. To the business world, right? And talk about acceptance. We accept that you have to be nasty to be successful. We've accepted it. We've celebrated it. But yeah, Gordon Ramsay, ever see his show? It's a great show, by the way, but boy, does he kick ass. He just absolutely humiliates people, and at the end of the day, pats him on the back and says it was all worth it. And it always bothers me to see that. Donald Trump made a career saying, you're fired, and being nasty to people. And does anybody know this guy Chainsaw, what his name is? That's right. Sunbeam and Scott Paper fame, or infamy, we should say. And the short story there is, I only have him up there not because he, was successful and crashed and burned, but the fact of the matter was that, Wall Street valued him. So we accept it, we celebrate it, and then we place a value on it. So everywhere this guy went to turn around ailing companies, initially the stock price shot up, and they valued it. Now, the post-mortem and the postscript on most of his stories is that he then left and the place was in shambles because through his coercion, his nasty guy, he got short-term results, because people will work for short-term results, but it won't be lasting. So really what we've got to do is to build that confidence and conviction side. What I would set out to do is do a bunch of research on, okay, well, how do you make that sort of argument that can allow you, when the chips are down and things get tough, to sort of say, yeah, but I'm going to stick with it anyway. And so I came up with 6 different buckets of argument that I personally think each one on its own is compelling. Taken together are quite compelling. And the more interesting thing is these common threads that you will see across all of these somewhat different segments. So the case for nice guys is pretty strong, you'd have to say. I would say it is. I think it's a compelling argument in total. And then the question is, yeah, okay, but why haven't in 75 years? Why is there so much of this coercion and nastiness and lack of cooperation? Well, number one, nastiness works. It just does. Rats will spin their wheels to avoid electrocution. They'll spin faster for cheese, but they just will do it. And people will get reports on the desk tomorrow to avoid being publicly humiliated in front of their peers and dressed down and threatened with, being fired. It's also easier, quite frankly. We're human beings, and to come in and have to invest in sort of a relationship it takes work, it takes commitment, and it also takes, self-discipline. And the fact of the matter is, we're not robots, we're not saints, we're just human beings. We have ego, we have emotion, and sometimes ego and emotion can drive the train. So then the real question is, okay, well, if that's the case, then what do you do about it? The second tool set, which I thought we could steal from and borrow from, is this whole area of cognitive behavioral modification, or cognitive behavioral therapy, which is widely used in the field of psychology, again, and very, very effectively as a treatment modality for lots of different mood disorders. People with serious mood disorders like bipolar, obsessive-compulsive disorder, anxiety, depression disorder, use CBT. It's based on the idea that it's the person's thoughts, their initial thoughts that convert to feelings that control behavior. And that if you therefore come in at the beginning of that process and influence thoughts, how you perceive something, you can actually change the outcome later on. With 20% of the population that suffers from mood disorders, it's extremely effective. With management teams that want to learn how to play together in a sandbox and fit into an organization, these kinds of tools, and in executive coaching, they are applied from time to time, are extremely important. And we won't spend a lot of time on them, but you can do this on a self-help, self-control basis. Practice reappraisal of the situation instead of rumination. Don't make assumptions when the person comes in. Do some self-assessment of your own emotional triggers and come up with techniques of active listening where you validate the other person's thoughts, validate what they said, repeat what they said before you go back and say, okay, thank you for your opinion, now here's my opinion. And that's what we do. And these are basic, playing well in the sandbox kinds of principles that senior level executives fail to recognize could help make them more effective and more productive as a team. Basic things like that. The good news is they're really easy to overcome with a little bit of commitment. You can just sit there and say, I know I bust out when people bring me bad news, so every time I see bad news coming, these are the 3 things I'm going to do. It's things as simple as that, which would enhance the overall spirit of cooperation. The common thread in all of these are basically the nice guy principles, that you don't make any negative assumptions walking in. You rely on the spirit and the ancient notion of human cooperation and reciprocity, and you use these other techniques and these other principles to balance yourself and conduct yourself in an organization or a group setting, whether it's a big corporation or a working group. Humor is a great tool, because humor will actually convert ego to humility through self-deprecation. Humor also has this tendency to take rumination and go into reappraisal, which just takes people out of the mindset, out of the game, and allows everybody to relax a little bit and be there, and therefore become more cooperative and therefore more productive. It's changing. And that's my message to you, to develop yourself, develop that conviction, get yourself from doubt to conviction, carry the torch forward so that you can really believe and spread the word that nice guys can, should, and actually do all the time if we take a look. Finish first. Thank you so much for all the time you give.